Good morning. I am Steve Weber. Welcome to today's show, the American Gumption Morning Show, broadcasting on the American Gumption Facebook page and American Gumption YouTube channel, and also on Spirituality Gone Wild and Spiritual Communities Network. So we've got fun things happening today. Alrighty. So what we're going to do today is we are going to have Darlene Ondi join us, and she's going to join us in about 10, 12 minutes from now. And she is a freedom fighter, and she's an inspiration to me, and she's inspiration to lots of people across the planet, but specifically she's working out of Canada. So I'm excited to have her talk about what she is doing and how she is, protecting the liberties that all of us worldwide want to continue to enjoy. Alrighty, and she has inspired me to do my own monologue, and I'm just titling this "Freedom of Speech." So I'm going to give my thoughts on freedom of speech and what that means to me and what it means to American Gumption and specifically to this show. Alrighty, so that's coming up. So let me just tell you what is going to happen. Today's Friday, show number 191. It's Friday, June 18th, and next week we're going to not do a live show on Monday. That's pretty standard fare around here. We don't always do a show. Some Mondays we do, some Mondays we don't. So no show on Monday. Tuesday, Denise Flood will be joining us, and Denise is going to introduce me and the audience into what tapping is all about. Basically tapping, how that can be something that is therapeutic for your mind and body and your spirit. Alrighty. And then on Friday, Gwen Peterson is going to join us for a meditation 101. I've had my own meditation practice, so we're just going to have a conversation about, what a beginning meditation practice would look like and what a more advanced meditation practice might evolve into. And then Wednesday and Thursday, I'll do shows. I can't announce a guest at this moment, but that will be forthcoming. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and just jump into the monologue. And again, I'm titling this Freedom of Speech. Alrighty, so the First Amendment of our Constitution, our U.S. Constitution, 45 words long. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So, in other words, it enunciates 5 rights that we have: speech, religion, press, assembly, and the right to petition the government. So those are the 5 rights that are spelled out in the very First Amendment of the Constitution. Probably kind of an important amendment since it's the First Amendment. All righty. So in the last year, our rights have diminished. We've had a pandemic. All right. Lots of things were happening. Now, here's the problem, or here's the concern. Are these rights that diminished, are they going to come back and be restored, or are they going to somehow be, continued? And this is what people are concerned about. And this is what I'm going to talk a little bit about. All right. So we've been, during the last year, and here's just some examples. During the last year, we told we can't assemble. Obviously, restaurants, the hospitality industry, completely decimated, completely destroyed. Churches, no more assembling. Well, people learned how to do things online. That's not necessarily been a bad thing, but all this while, there were people being told that they can't assemble, even if they wanted to. Concerts, sporting events, all shut down. Any kind of a big assemblage of people not happening. So we have freedom of assembly, and yet those freedoms were taken away from us this past year. All right, is it strictly a health-related thing? Yeah, okay, maybe, but maybe not. The social media giants began censoring our words. There were certain things that you can and can't say, certain questions that you can't ask. There were certain narratives that were being endorsed, and yet these, if you questioned it, you got, you got shut down, you got shadow banned, you got suspended, you were canceled. Kind of hard to believe that the president of the United States was told that he doesn't have right to speak anymore. Pretty incredible. Obviously not the government doing it, but these big media giants doing it. And it didn't just start last year. This has been, there has been a point of view that's been out there for years that people have, been questioning and concerned about. Hollywood has its own perspective and point of view. College campuses have their own perspective and point of view. The media for years and years has had its point of view, even though it acted like it didn't. And what they've been doing is they've been telling us what to think. They've been telling us how to think. And to work in those industries, there's been a code or an accepted point of view that one needs to adhere to. Now, do I know that for a fact? No, I don't know that. I've never seen the code written down. And yep, lots of people have talked about it, and lots of people have, speculated on it, even though these folks have all said, hey, that's not true. It's just not happening. No, we're like right down the middle. We're independent. And yet, if you disagree with their point of view, then you are silenced. You are silenced. All right. So, and if you're just a casual observer, if you're not somebody who's taking a stand, or someone who has a platform like the American Gumption Morning Show, if you're just somebody who has an opinion, you're called a kook or an old-fashioned person if you don't agree or you don't adhere to what it is that they are, what they are talking about. All righty. So now back in the late 70s, I was right out of high school. Graduated in 76, working for a couple of years out of high school. And I remember I was still living at home, in my parents' home. And I remember watching 60 Minutes. And I remember thinking, why is it that they are trying to convince me of their point of view? And I thought, why aren't you just like, kind of like telling me both sides of a story and letting me make up my own mind. And I saw that some people that they interviewed were coddled and made to look good. And other people were badgered and made to look like fools. And you could just tell by the tone of the question that they asked, or the smirk on their face, and then yet the people who they liked and they wanted to. So there was a point of view that was very clear. And here I was, 21, 20, 21, 22, and I was noticing these things. And I thought, this is kind of weird. And I just felt like I was trying to be convinced. Like I felt like they were trying to jam something down my throat. All right. So this is a long time ago. This is let's just call it 1980 to round it off. So that's 41 years ago. The media already was jamming things down our throat. And over the years, I had a kind of a healthy suspicion of what I would hear. And I'd say, is that true? Because I sensed that they were people who were trying, they have an agenda, they have a perspective. All right. So now, so in the 90s, in the early 90s, conservative talk radio began. And then by the late 90s, there were conservative news broadcast channels that, considered themselves to be conservative, or were called conservative by the other people, even though they were in some ways, they were reporting both sides of the story a lot more fairly than one particular side of the story would be. So anyway, it's like, and people responded to it, right? There became an audience for this because people wanted to hear that. They thought they were kooky and nutty if they, didn't agree with everything that they were being told. Big businesses aligned themselves with the politicians. That was clear. And so then you have to ask the question, do you trust the government? Do you trust what the big businesses that are aligned with the governments are saying? Do you trust the media? And I think for me, it's been a healthy perspective to go, no, I don't trust these folks. I don't, you listen to it, you hear it, and you're like, do you really trust it and believe it? And you try to find different points of view, differing ideas. All right. So why have I been fearful to take a stand up until today? So I started the American Gumption Show back on August 3rd, 2020. today's show number 191. And this is the first time I'm specifically addressing this particular issue. And yet the show's called American Gumption. And one of the pillars, which I just defined a few weeks ago, is freedom. Freedom is one of the pillars. So we stand for freedom of speech, all freedoms for all people. Humans want to be free. That's very clear. That's why this country was founded back in 1776, is because people wanted to be free. They didn't want to be ruled by others. And I think that spirit is alive today and still very much going on. Now, I'm smart enough to know that to be heard, I have to abide by certain standards. I can't be crazy. I can't be reckless. And yet here we are dancing around certain subjects. I don't feel like I have full freedom of speech to just say whatever it is I'm thinking. Because otherwise I could be, shadow banned or shut down. You don't want to do that. You want to have a conversation. You want to have a conversation, and you want to be able to discuss like adults these ideas and these issues, and do it in a way that's responsible and in a way that lets people know, where you stand, but also, points out differing opinions as opposed to one particular opinion that is being, again, like kind of forced upon people. People don't like that. So I have to ask myself, am I willing to just stand by silently, or do I as an individual and with this platform have an obligation or a desire to speak out? And the answer is yes, I do have to speak out. I don't want to see our freedoms diminished. I don't want to see our country, the United States, be radically transformed. I do believe that the founders of our country, the framers, were enlightened and noble in their intentions. I'll repeat that. Our founders of the country were noble and enlightened and had good intentions for what they wanted. And I think that our country has thrived and come to where it is today as a result of that, been a beacon of hope throughout the world. And yet, there's a movement to see if that, doesn't continue. So I will be speaking out for freedom. I will be speaking out for freedom of speech. And to the degree possible, I'll speak out for freedoms of people across the globe. Every human wants to be free. And there are countries that are a lot less free than the United States. And and whatever could be done to help those people become free should be done. But obviously, if we lose our freedoms here in the United States, then that will be a sad day, and that will not help the rest of the people. So that is the monologue on freedom of speech. Thank you, Darlene, Ondi, for inspiring me to go ahead and take a stand today and to say what was on my mind. That's been on my mind for a long time, but up until today, I have not spoken out on that. All righty. So let's go ahead and welcome Darlene is in the bright. She is a beacon of sunshine in the light. Well, there she is. But I guess it's a little bright. You're out on the West Coast. So welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Thanks for getting up early, Darlene.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Steve. And wow, listening to you in the background, there's so much. I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, just ready to, I'm nodding, going, yes. And, I'm glad I'm inspiring you. And my goal today with your viewership and your listenership is to inspire others into action. Good. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
You're very welcome. Now, Darlene, there are two little tiny rules that we have here at the American Gumption Morning Show when we get started with a brand new guest. Rule number one is I get to read a bio and an intro that tells people who you are. Are you agreeable to that?
Absolutely.
Number two rule is that I will play a song, and the song is called the First Time Guest Welcoming Theme Song. So anytime we have a first time guest to the show, we play this little musical song to welcome them. But if you come back again a second time or a third time, we will not play the song. So that's rule number two.
Sounds okay to me.
All righty. Well, let me put you in the big screen while I read your bio and introduction. So Darlene Ondi has a drive for excellence. She is known as a go-to person. I like that. You are a go-to person. She has served as the executive coordinator for 2 global CEOs, supporting them in working with women all over the world to yield a revenue of over $1 million. Currently, she is working to bring awareness to the world as an activist. She participates and facilitates Freedom Rallies, where Canadians gather to defend their sovereign rights. Darlene is a magnet for high vibration people. That's how we met. We vibed right into each other. And one might call her an intuitive connector. I love that term, intuitive connector. Not only does she have a knack for bringing together collaborators of like mind, she also is adept at tracking the details of production to make sure the events achieve their goals. And she is a trusted colleague and valued liaison. Darlene is also a potent speaker, able to convey the important details with an uplifting vision, and she has co-authored several books. She recently emceed an historic assembly in Canada and works closely with exceptional peers such as Ted Kuntz, president of Vaccine Choice Canada, and Tanya Gaw of Action for Canada. Darlene believes in freedom, empowerment, and being your highest, most magnificent self. She reminds others that coming from a place of truth, compassion, and happiness are virtues that we should all strive for. Darlene radiates health, and so people seek her out to learn how they too can enjoy health and wellness. She might even tell us how old she is at some point. She's not ashamed of sharing her age. Through her own journey, she has come to understand the importance of good nutrition, and on a deeper level, one's beliefs that as a woman thinketh, so she is. I think James Allen said that originally. Yeah. So her 2 mantras: know thyself and treat others as you choose to be treated. Know thyself, treat others as you choose to be treated. Darlene Ondi, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Hey, it's really great to have you here. I appreciate your joining us. We met not quite 2 years ago, and we had talked about some other things, when we first got to know each other, and I got to know you as a person and as the genuine, authentic person that you are, and the intuitive connector, and the high vibration person. And yet about a year ago, your life took a bit of a turn that you hadn't foreseen. How did that come about? I mean, what happened there that you suddenly, oh, wait a minute. I didn't play the song yet, did I? I'm ready to jump into the conversation. I didn't play the welcoming song, did I?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's play it, and then we'll get into the conversation. Have you ever had a marching band welcome you to a broadcast, Darlene?
I have not, but it took me back because I actually used to play trombone, and I was in a marching band, and I played jazz trombone. So it took me back a few years. So thanks.
All righty. Well, very good. I was in the marching band too. I played the saxophone. So the horns and the saxophones were always good friends with each other.
We were always.
All righty. Hey, so yeah, we got a lot to talk about. And I'm going to open this up and let you kind of go wherever you want to go. But maybe a nice place to start is, your life took kind of a sharp turn about a year ago when you went, wait a minute, I can't sit back any longer and just watch what's happening. We all kind of know what was going on at that time, but how, what was it that kind of, hit you and said, hey, I'm not willing to just, accept what I'm being told here. Let's see what we can't do to make a difference in this world.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity, Steve. And, there are moments in your life that sort of you're sitting quietly, or you're on a specific journey where you think you're taking the right path, and then an event happens and it just veers you into your purpose and your calling. So I believe I had mentioned to you that I in my past, my first job out of high school, I went to university and I specialized in Native studies. I think I'm the first white woman to actually get that degree that I got with distinction. And I worked with abused children. And so that's always been a huge passion of mine. And so as you know, there aren't too many people that end up in the careers that they start with. So I've had many careers as life takes us. And I happened to be just coming back to Canada. I'd been in Louisiana for about 4 months with my health and wellness business, which can be another conversation. And I'm living in this gorgeous space where I look over the Okanagan Lake, and I have a mountain here on the side. That's where the sunshine's coming from in gorgeous BC, Canada here. And a colleague of mine asked me to go to a rally. This is when, things had all started. And I have been awake for a long time because of my journey. Big follower of David Icke, who I was actually listening to this morning before I was getting ready for your show, Steve. And my friend asked me to go to this rally, which we went to. And that led me to another rally in Vernon, British Columbia, Canada. And it was the first rally outside where this woman of courage, her name is Heather Hilliard, and we had this outdoor gathering because the health professional here said that we couldn't gather outside of more than 50 people, which was absolutely ridiculous. So of course we went to this event, and I thought it was a couple hours. However, someone told me that there was a speaker by the name of Ted Kuntz that I needed to hear. And I consider myself quite a researcher. I'd never heard of this man. So this took us more to sort of a really intimate, small gathering in a basement. I believe there would have been about 20 of us in there. So I was about 6 feet from the speaker. And first, before they introduced this man, they brought on a video of him speaking in front of the parliamentary buildings in Ottawa, where he made a public statement that he was suing the government of Ontario, Justin Trudeau, all the high officials of Ontario, the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, and the government of Canada. So I was like, wow, who is this guy? So that held me back. Like, I was in awe at that moment. But they also showed a very small clip of a movie that I'm really going to encourage your viewers and your listenership to watch. And what I told this lady that I was speaking about last night, I said, you better grab a bottle of wine or two and a box of Kleenex when you watch it. So it's called Vaxxed 2, VAXXED 2. And Ted Kuntz, who is speaking, his son had been murdered by the DPT vaccine. And I won't even call it vaccine. I'm going to call it a bioweapon. And I watched these pictures of these children that had died. There were horrific pictures, and I was there bawling. And then he got up to speak. And it was in that moment, Steve, that I decided I have to do something. So on our way back, I believe there was 4 or 5 of us in a vehicle. And I said, we're doing an event. So that led us to the very first event in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, at a regional park called Bertram Park, where we had over 200 courageous freedom fighters come to our event, even though the public health official here, Bonnie Henry, stated that we could not gather. We had the police, the public health officials, the park authorities come to that gathering telling us that we couldn't gather. And because a very amazing man by the name of David Lindsay, who represents an organization called CLEAR, he stated to them our rights under the Canadian Constitution, which are very similar in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to what you talked about in your introduction, Steve. And they left with their tails between their legs. And I emceed that event, which led to obviously me emceeing, other events. But my last greatest pleasure was emceeing the March 20th Worldwide Freedom Rally in Kelowna, BC. We represented Canada, and I believe we had about 1,500 people there, even though the news said we had about 200. And I had the honor of Zooming with Dr. Judy Mikovits, who talked about her experience on the plane. And we continue to go to rallies. I'm actually, after this, Steve, going to a rally tomorrow where we're going to be gathering, and we're trusting that there's going to be 2,000 plus there. So that's sort of a long story to your question there. Wow.
You so it was like you didn't have this intention to go get involved. You were, you said that you've been awake for a long time. You've been aware, you've been, watching things, but suddenly you just went and you got involved, and the people you met so inspired you that you got involved. And really the last year of your life you've dedicated to this mission and this purpose.
100% freedom fighter, truth seeker, activist for Canada. I'm doing what I can. And I'd like to speak to a couple things that I'm doing right now,
please,
Steve, if that's all right.
Yep, please.
So for your listenership, I would like them to, keep these organizations in mind. I have the pleasure of being on a call every early Saturday morning, and I get to work and listen to some of the most brilliant minds. Most of them are from across Canada, but Ted Kuntz, again from Vaccine Choice, has a freedom fighter call, of which a very brilliant Dr. Stephen Malthouse, who is an out-of-the-box thinker, and I have hold this gentleman in high esteem, and he represents an organization called the Canada Health Alliance.org, and I'm going to encourage everyone to go on that website and see what these doctors are doing to fight for our rights and freedoms from a science and medical perspective. I also want to put in a very large kudos for Ted Kuntz of Vaccine Choice Canada, and that is vaccinechoicecanada.com, where there is so much information on there. And most recently, I am standing beside and assisting Tanya Gall, who's the founder of Action for Canada. So that's action with the number 4, Canada.com. And there is a plethora of information. I'm actually going to go through a couple of things that we're doing right now with that organization. But I also want to talk about my wonderful friend, Cynthia, who I met on a journey about 11 years ago in California. And she is the producer of a show called The Other Side of the News. And that is every Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific. But of course, there's recordings, and there is so many freedom fighters and incredible truth seekers on there that I want to lead people to that place as well, to get the information that they're requiring at this time, because we're in uncertain times. So a couple of things that I'm doing is I'm representing the parents organization of Action for Canada. So I'm not sure if your listenership and viewership, Steve, knows that they are giving consent to children 12 and up to go get the bioweapon. And, there's many other issues. So what Vaccine Choice has done is they have on their website many resources, but currently the main one we're speaking to is something called a notice of liability. So it's a 5-page document. One is specific for the parents to hand to the officials of, ministers of education, superintendents, the teachers, and upward and onward. And then there's also a 5-page document for people who are concerned citizens. And I wanted to read just a little bit in here for people to understand. It's 5 pages. It is like when someone gets handed this. So what I do is I assist people in teaching them how to stand powerfully, look powerfully, speak powerfully, because these parents need to represent their children. And in Canada, we're kind of known as the excuse me people, tree huggers, for people that are very compliant. And I do have to say that many of us are, but there are a few, just as in the United States and globally, of people that are taking a stand because we are awake, right? So I'm going to read a couple things because this is also dealing with United States as well as globally. So it says, to school superintendents, heads of schools, universities, colleges, board education executives, directors, principals, teachers, deans, and administration. So attention, and then you put in whoever you're serving. And it says, this is your official and personal notice of liability. As a person involved in the education system, you are not a qualified medical professional, and therefore you are unlawfully practicing medicine by prescribing, recommending, facilitating, and using coercion to insist minors submit to the experimental medical treatment for COVID-19, namely being injected with one of the experimental gene therapies commonly referred to as the vaccine. And we don't name it that because Dr. Larry on a Zoom with Dr. Sherry Tenpenny and other doctors said about 15 times, this is not a vaccine, this is not a vaccine, this is not a vaccine. So I want to read you a couple of things in here because this is so important. And again, I believe on a global level. The citizens of Canada are protected under the medical and legal ethics of express informed consent and are entitled to the full protections guaranteed under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, 1982, Section 2A, 2B, 7, 8, 9, and 15. The Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights of 2005, the Nuremberg Code of 1947, the Helsinki Declaration 1964, revised in 2013, Article 25 and 26. All Canadian law, contrary to misinformation spread by the WHO, does not allow for implied consent. The mature minor doctrine cannot override the wishes and consent of the parents outside of the emergency threat of imminent harm or death. Vaccinations do not fall under the mature minor doctrine. So, I mean, this is a notification and we're holding people to account. So this is very serious business. I, by nature, Steve, was a more quiet, behind the scenes, more supportive people. But because of my purpose to fight for the children, which was ignited again by Ted Koontz, I give that man, I hold him in the highest esteem. And he is, you know, his son was murdered by this jab. And I want to do my part because I believe at some point in life, before I take my last breath, if a child comes up to me and says, what did you do? I want to, in integrity, say to them, I did everything I possibly could in this lifetime for you to have your rights and freedoms, and do that in integrity.
This is important work that you're doing, and you know, we get silenced and we get bullied into not speaking up. When things broke a year ago and this all came on to the news, people in general are want to do the right thing, want to protect their fellow citizens, and want to follow rules or follow what is guidelines or procedures, and yet the whole thing kind of to many people smelt a bit fishy at the time, and then we now have the benefit of hindsight. And here in our country, the Freedom of Information Act has revealed lots of emails with the person heading up the whole thing, and in it looks like a cabal, basically, that creates something that is causing lots of harm, and then the same people involved in that creating it are now suddenly the ones who are coming up with the solution, but they're not telling you, the whole story. And then there's the big pharmaceutical companies that are making these vaccines. And I've always wondered about that because I thought, wait a minute, a vaccine is something that like prevents this from happening. And a flu shot is not. A flu shot historically has not been called a vaccine, and suddenly, it was like becoming a vaccine. So I'll let you address that in a minute. But the point is that we can either like just swallow all of this hook, line, and sinker and trust, and lots of people do because people are busy. People trust their elected officials and their representatives and these professionals to take care of them. And then yet we're finding out that the people doing all this have dual interest that they're trying to serve. And they basically look like a bunch of you know, it looks like a bunch of not such good stuff going on behind the scenes. Looks like a bunch of people who have their own self-interest more at heart than they do of the people that they're intending to be serving. And so, you know, there's lots of people who just want to trust and go along with like, hey, yeah, these people are professionals and they know what they're doing. And then there's other people who are going, well, wait a minute. There are side effects. This isn't, you know, there's languages being changed, things that, something that's not a vaccine is suddenly being called a vaccine. And, you know, so it's like, it's very confusing to the average person who wants to just live their life in peace and harmony and in good health and raise their children. And yet there's all this crazy stuff going on behind the scenes. And so it's a mess. And how do we make a difference in this world? I mean, you know, you're doing what you're doing. I get that. But you know, what would we like if we just back up a little bit? I mean, what do you say to the people who just want to, you know, like live their life and get along, and then at the same time, you know, they don't have time to research all this stuff. And so thank goodness there are people like Ted and others who are doing the research and creating these things. So anyway, I'm just sort of, I don't know if there's a question in there as much as I'm just responding to what you said, because it's important. And but it's also, I'm trying to show that there's, you know, it's like people want to do the right thing. And yet, how do you know what the right thing is when you ultimately you can't really trust some of these people, or maybe lots of these people? Yeah. Well, so anyway, I'll throw it back to you, and you can, you know, maybe we're both just ranting here this morning.
Well, first of all, Steve, you've definitely opened up the vortex, okay, the Pandora's box. So I want to make clear to your listeners and your viewers that I am not a medical professional. I don't have a nursing background. I'm not a doctor. I am a freedom fighter. I research, and I have learned to ask a lot of questions. There's a term that I kind of chuckle about. It says, become an exceptional ask hole. Learn to ask a lot of questions. And what I also say to people, whatever their beliefs are, is trust your intuition. And I was with a group of mothers last night, and we talked about, you've got to ask yourself, and again, when you watch this movie, Backs 2, I'm really going to encourage everyone to do that, is you see when these children, because the scheduling of the jabs, most kids, by the time they get through school at 17, 18, have had 72 jabs. 72. And then you look at the rate of autism and sickness, and it's obvious. And especially when you see this movie, they show these children that got the jab, and then ones that the parents that have fought for their kids and have been demonized because they have stood for their rights and freedoms to say, no, we're not doing that. And that's what you have to do, is you have to dig deep and you choose wisely. Because once you take the jab, you cannot unjab yourself. And I'm studying this course by Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. We have sat through an hour, 20 mechanisms of injury. When people understand what is in there, I mean, a lot of people, again, you can take a notice of liability to this person that's giving you the jab, and you need to say, if anything happens to me, I'm holding you liable. And before you put that in my arm, what are the ingredients? And can you tell me what those ingredients are? Most people have no idea, because this word called trust, okay? And what I have learned the hard way, Steve, as I'm sure you have, is a word called discernment. You have to pause and not make emotional decisions. You have to make rational, based on intuition, based on a lot of research. Surround yourself with people that know what's going on, and it's a small group of people. And I surround myself. My circle gets smaller and smaller, and that's of my choosing, because these are people that have made difficult decisions. They have been, you know, cast out, shunned by their family and their friends, and some of these people are exceptionally brilliant people, but they've made a choice to follow the narrative that is not based in science. And so people really need to do their research because the information, it's slowly being dripped out. But there are literally thousands of people and now children that are dying of conditions that have never happened before. And these are even babies that are getting, that are dying from conditions from their mom's breast milk. And I won't go into that, but you know, we hear horrific stories. And at some point, Steve, even though some of us are scared and we're nervous, you get that there's a line, right, where you say enough. And I'm going to choose to be very uncomfortable to help others. And that's what I chose to do. I learn as I go, and I stand in my truth. And I do a lot of research before I speak out. And now I've become very involved in these organizations. I'm on a ton of Zooms because I want to teach people how to get out there and develop confidence through practice. You've got to practice your craft. And when that incident comes up, you know, when the moment, you're prepared. And I tell people it's okay to have something written down and you speak it out loud and you take your time and you say what you need to say. And we've all seen those videos of these moms where their kids were saying, Mom, I don't want to wear this mask in school. I don't want to do this. And the parents finally, representing their children, grab the courage that they need. And so this is the journey that I have chosen to do for as long as it takes, Steve, to help these parents and whoever else. I'm an open book. We learn together. We do this together.
I think, and I appreciated that you reminded me that, you know, yes, I opened up the can of worms, and I'm not a medical professional either. I'm not making, if people, you know, if people have to make their own informed decision. And so that's really what we're talking about here is talking about like, well, we're hearing one side that says this is what we all need to do. And then there are a lot of people who are very passionate and very concerned, and they are speaking up and they are creating places that you can go and get information. And so basically what we're doing here is we're having a conversation, and we're saying, hey, there's two sides to this story, and you want to educate yourself so that you can make the decision that's right for you and for your family, for your children. So yes, that absolutely. That's what we're doing here. And that really comes down to, you know, what my monologue was, freedom of speech, right? There were people who were at the very beginning of this, this whole scenario a year ago, doctors, medical people who were basically not following along with the prescribed, you know, the narrative. And these people were basically, their voices were shut down. And so suddenly they did not have the freedom. And these were medical people, and they were saying, hey, here's what my experience is, blah, blah, blah. And so, you know, that was very interesting for people like me, who I'm curious. I want to know what both sides of the story are. And I was not being given that right. And so this whole thing kind of spun out of control in terms of, you know, big media or big social media, you know, basically deciding what could be discussed or what couldn't be discussed. And things are changing. So I'm optimistic, and I believe that the information is available for people who want to learn more. And then you can make your own informed decision about what's right for you and your family. And you're one of those people who's standing up and saying, hey, here's where the information is. Here are groups that are assembling a different perspective. And, you know, we have the freedom to, we still have the freedom to look and make those things, choices for ourselves. And yet, you know, there's that pressure to conform to a certain thing and not ask questions. And that's very, you know, from my perspective, that's very un-American. From your perspective, it's not, you know, it's not what Canadians, you know, it's not what the Canadian Constitution says. And so it's, so I appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much. And again, the information is out there, Steve. Like as an example, If people just go on the CDC website, there is a section in there that talks about zombies. People are going to go, what are you talking about? Why would there be a section on zombies on the CDC? Well, you've got to ask yourself that question. So the information is there. People simply need to look. And the lie is so big, Steve. It's so huge that if you say the lie often enough, they can say, this is black, but I'm going to tell you it's white. And over time, because of this is also so psychological, and we acquiesce, as David Icke says, we acquiesce towards the totalitarian tiptoe. They do this very subtly, but with certainty. And this has been planned a long time. And we are living in a movie, and I call it the Twilight Zone. I mean, it's unusual these days, but it is shifting. And again, it's more about people holding on to their uniqueness, our magnificence. When people recognize how absolutely magnificent and powerful they are, and we step into our courage, once you get that energy in your way of being, you're unstoppable. And that's what happened to me, is my soul got ignited that day. Ted Kuntz reminded me of my purpose. And when you know what your purpose is, it's my calling. It's my calling to do something good, make a difference in this world before I take my last breath. And I'm doing this for the children. And I'm doing it for the parents who are not able to represent their kids. And I'm doing this for those that choose to remain closed. And I have learned forgiveness. I've learned to have compassion for people. But I've also taught myself to be accountable and responsible while I'm here. And it's a difficult journey. I mean, it would be easier to do nothing, you know, and to just put the mask and everything else. And I have chosen the difficult path, and I do it willingly.
And it requires a lot of time and effort and energy and self-educating yourself, because this information isn't easy to find. There's lots of things that are out there. So you need to become essentially a student of the topic that you're going to speak forcefully about. And once you educate yourself, then you can do that. And so I appreciate that you are leading the way on it. Lori checks in and just says she tuned in. Very interesting topic. Many of us are afraid to even speak out because people shoot us down. Absolutely. It's just not, you know, this whole crazy time that we live in it's very disruptive. And at the same time, I'm optimistic, and I believe that it's actually, for me, it's personally been a pretty good time this last year, because I was ready for, you know, kind of, you know, what's going on. And it was a good time for me to, you know, kind of do what I'm doing. And so, my life had been so disrupted the last 10 years that this like little bounce, you know, didn't necessarily catch me as off guard. I was already off. I had already gotten knocked down, and you know, maybe your story's similar in that you were knocked down, and you know, you get back up. And so, but a lot of people, you know, a lot of people who weren't ready for it. It's been, you know, it's been really tough for them to, you know, deal with, because their lives have been turned upside down. Our lives, my life, your life, you know, we kind of went through our own period of self-discovery earlier in the journey. So anyway, it's a process. It's a journey. I choose to remain optimistic. I know that you're optimistic, even though you're fighting hard and you're on the front line, you know, at these moments. But there's an opportunity for the world to, you know, have a lot more freedom, because the old systems that have been in place for, you know, what, 40, 50, 100 years, you know, yes, they're not sustainable if the truth is what's going to prevail. And so there's people like you and I who are saying, hey, you know, we're not going to stand for less than the truth. And it's a very interesting time to be alive. And obviously we chose to come into this world, and we chose to do this work, even though it doesn't feel like sometimes we, you know, it's like, why are we choosing to do this? This is crazy. And yet here we are doing it. So
I 100% in agreement. And again, for your viewers, like when they say like, what can I do? I'm one person. I'm one person. What I want everyone to really hear clearly from me today, if I leave them with anything, is you are much more magnificent than you are. The difference you can make as one individual will become exponential. And we are all here, I believe, at this time because we were meant to be here to do something of significance. So, and I believe there are no accidents either. And we go through trials and tribulations, Steve, to hone us. You know, we're this diamond, but we're covered with all this crap and all these incidences. It starts shaving off that to get to that diamond. And I really believe that beautiful people have to go through something for you to discover. This is a journey of self-discovery of your highest self. This is not about me. This is about the conscious collective and what we're doing together as a community. We are all unique energies, but we are all part of the puzzle. And we all have an integral part to play, and it's of your choosing. And I want to make sure before, again, I take my last breath to say that I did the best that I could in each and every moment. And there's always different levels of greatness. And why not have a great life, Steve? And we really can have it all if we choose to.
Yeah. When I decided to leave Montana 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, I decided 2 years ago to leave, but it took me a few months to get out of there. It was really because I felt like I needed to go back out into the world. And then that was when the American Gumption Project was born. And the idea being that we're going to travel around and we're going to tell happy stories, because all I was hearing was fear-based stories. And what you're dealing with directly today and what started a year ago is nothing more than a fear-based story, and it's crumbling, it's falling apart, and the truth is coming out. And so I think if we continue on the path that we're on, and we encourage others to discover their own path, then and unite with the other like-minded people, then the truth will ultimately win out. So just thank you for being willing to come on, and thank you more importantly personally, because you I knew I needed to step out of the comfort zone that I have been in this last year. And I have spoken about many, many things this last year publicly that I had never imagined I would speak about. But this is one more pillar, one more very important thing that needed to come forth. And you helped me bring that out today and start that. And so, you might have started a tidal wave. We will find out. So thank you so much, Darlene.
Well, it's my pleasure. And that's actually one of my goals, Steve, is to inspire others into action. And remember how geese fly. The one goose is at the head of the V, but what happens when that goose gets tired, the next one comes up. So this is about us each being the wind under everyone's wings. We're all in this together to assist each other.
Thank you. And I have some other people that I will need to introduce you to who in some ways have bigger platforms than I do, who would love to hear your message. So we'll talk about that, and we'll see if we can't make that happen, and we'll keep spreading this word. So in the last couple of minutes, what else would you like to say? I always like to, I think we don't want to be fear-based people, because that's not who we are. How can we leave this like in a positive? There's a lot of darkness around what we're talking about, some of these things, but how can we leave it in a positive way so that people feel like, hey, there is potential, there is light at the end of this tunnel, there is, we can create that better life for ourselves.
Well, again, Steve, what I would like to do is, acknowledge the people that are here on your program, your viewers and your listenership, because that's the first step, is being open to a conversation, right? So are you open to a conversation? And I'm happy to speak with anyone. They can find me on Facebook, Darlene Ondi. I'm also going to be working on a show with a gentleman, and you'll be hearing more about this, Steve, but it's going to be called the Ondi Condi show, so we can, speak more to the things that we're doing out there in the world. Again, these websites that I shared with people, please go out there and research. And if they want to reach me personally, they can get that information. I believe you'll probably be adding many links on your show or whatever that looks like, Steve. But I am happy to assist people who choose to get more information, and then I can lead them. I have some very interesting connections, as you know, as do you, to get them the resources and the conversations they need to embed that information that they're looking for.
All righty. Well, thank you, Darlene. We will have you back again sometime. We will not play that first time welcoming theme song.
I'm so sad.
So this was your one and only time to let everybody know that you played the trombone in the marching band.
Many years ago.
We'll continue this conversation because it's not over. I mean, it's really, in some ways, it's just beginning. So thanks for joining us. Darlene Ondi, look her up on Facebook. That's how we originally got connected. You are a freedom fighter. We need to rename the show Global Gumption to honor the patriots all over the world who are fighting for their own freedoms in their own countries. So thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you again.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Steve. Take care from Canada, everyone.
All right. Well, thank you, Darlene, for joining us this morning. That was great. And really, again, thank you, because it was about 3 weeks ago when I finally defined what are the 8 pillars of Gumption. What do we talk about here on a regular basis? And freedom was one of those pillars, and it was the one that I felt like I needed to step into more. It was one of the ones that I had in my vision when I started this show, and yet it was one of the ones that I was maybe it's one of the ones that I was least comfortable in putting my heading out onto the branch and speaking the truth that I know in my heart. So anyway, thank you, Darlene, for inspiring me with that. So that's it. We're going to come back next week and have some more fun. Let's see. We are going to have Denise Flood on Tuesday and Gwen Peterson on Friday, and we'll be talking about tapping and meditation. So, one of the things that we talk about is how do you spiritually and physically take good care of yourself? So that's what we'll shift into that conversation next week, but it's all about being healthy, taking care of yourself so that you can, be that voice of freedom that others can look up to and be inspired by and follow along in their path. All righty. Well, that's it. Have a great, Lori says, yes, Global Gumption. Absolutely. Global Gumption is beyond, once we solve the American gumption problem, we're going Global Gumption. All righty. Have a great weekend, everybody. I will see you next week.